Wow. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Let's get to it. Thanks for waiting. I was trying to figure out the audio situation. I had a different mic in mind, but I think it should be. Yeah, looks like we're back to the original standing mic. I had a lapel mic that I was trying to use, but it stopped working for whatever reason. We're in the middle of testing it. But thanks for stopping in. Today we are going to be brewing a local recipe from a homebrew store here in Austin. The homebrew store is called SoCo Homebrew off of South Congress Avenue. And we're going to be brewing their quick Oktoberfest ale. They have a few different Oktoberfest recipes. This one is probably the one that's going to be the easiest. I say that because there are some Oktoberfests that need different temperatures to ferment at. Generally, they're a lot lower. So what we're trying to do now is get one that I can actually ferment at here in my house. I can keep it around 70 to 76 or so degrees in the closet, the dark closet, while those Oktoberfest, those other brews, generally required something like 55, 60 degrees max. And that's just not going to happen here. So I found one that was going to work here. Let's go ahead and get started with the ingredients. I'll turn this heat back on. Actually, that should be perfect. I'll leave this here. I already started the hot water for the grains. That's already at 150 degrees. All I have to do is get the grains inside of it. So that looks good. Let's see. It doesn't look like my chat is working on the bubbles in the bottom left there. Doesn't look like that's on right now. But that's all right. We're going to keep moving. As you may notice, I do have merch now. Feel free to check that out. The merch shop, the website is justbrewing.com/merch. You should see it right there. A great place to start if you're looking for some nice t-shirts. I do have a towel, some mugs. Feel free to look on there. All proceeds from the merch store are going to go to Stand Up for Cancer. I do believe I have an info link. It'll be in the video description when the video is uploaded. But so far, we have, and this is a local recipe, so things are going to look a little different than they did in previous live streams. But let's see. So we have some pure malt extract, a couple different types. This one is Munich liquid malt extract, and this is Pilsen Light liquid malt extract. So again, it's essentially just grains or malt. It's essentially this, but in liquid form. This is what we're working with now for the grains. It's not very much, all things considered. It's going to be close to about 3 pounds of 3 pounds of grains. 1 second. Weird. I'm being told that the live stream is... Oh, never mind. All right. So that should be fine. Things look good there. Okay. All right. Yeah, things look good. Cool. So feel free to... I do have a chat enabled. It's supposed to be in the bottom box there, but for whatever reason it's not showing. I can see chat, so feel free to, if there's any questions that you might have, feel free to put them there. Let's go ahead and try to get things going. This is creeping down, so I'm going to get this, set this to medium, get that heat going again. As we kind of move on, we've got a bag of Tradition hops. I've looked these up. These are very basic hops, very simple. Usually used for bittering, I believe. I believe these are usually used for bittering. While the other hops that we have, these are German hops. This is for flavoring, I want to say. Yeah, that's what the recipe shows. It shows that these are for bittering and these are for flavoring. So this is going to go in towards the tail end of our hop boil. By doing that, it's going to get a lot more flavor out of it, out of the hops as they boil and kind of dissipate into the wort. For now, let's go ahead and get these grains into this nylon bag here. This is used for an all grain recipe that I'm kind of sitting on. I need the equipment before I can go all grain. It's essentially a step up in the homebrew world. Right now, what we're using is what they call a partial mash or a liquid malt extract brew. So if you're looking at brewing, doing something similar to what I'm doing, you would be able to do that, but it would just use, instead of what would be 10 or 15 pounds of grain, you're looking at maybe 3. The benefit of these is that you don't have to worry, so you don't need the equipment for all grain. The equipment would be much larger kettles and buckets, what's called a mash tun, which is used for all of the grains. Essentially, you're making your own extract out of it, kind of, sort of. But the extract is a shortcut. So let's go ahead and open this up. Awesome. This is going to be a little messy, so I'm going to move over to the sink for now. I'm just going to tear this bag open now that I've got the grain bag in the nylon bag. Perfect. So just like that, I have the grains in a giant nylon bag. Again, this was for a recipe that's going to require about, I think it's 10 or 12 pounds of grains. It's in the cabinet there. I can't really do much with it without the equipment, but stay tuned. Hopefully, if the channel's able to go somewhere and I get a little assistance with getting the equipment, I'll be able to do that too, and then get videos on all grain brewing as well. It's a bit of a step up, a big step up, but it's a lot of fun. You can go from a 5-gallon batch to about an 8-gallon batch with only a couple $100 worth of equipment. For me, that means either doubling the bottles or getting a bit more beer into the kegerator, because I do, again, have a kegerator, which I'll show off later on. But now that I've got this in here, I'm going to go ahead and tie a knot in the bag. I'm going to do it a little higher up so that I can still hold the bag, because this is going to, it's going to sit in the water and it's going to get really, really hot. I want to be able to hold it. So we're getting up to 160. I believe this says to get it to 160. Keep it around 160 for about an hour. Cool. So I'm setting it in there. As the grains start to get picked up by the water, I'm going to do a little bit of moving around with it. That way all of the grain gets in contact with the water. Ooh, definitely don't do that again. I was trying to see if I could show you what it looks like, but that's all right. We're going to keep doing this just a few more times to make sure that all the grains are covered by the water. This recipe called for about 3 gallons of hot water, so I've already got the hot water in it. So now to watch it, to make sure it doesn't get too hot, I don't want the grains to burn. I want to make sure I get all the flavor and nutrients out of it. Otherwise, it just may burn. It may not be at the right gravity rating when we test it later. Just lots of not good things generally. So let's see. Let me refresh the chat, make sure I am up to date there. Cool. Awesome. So that looks good. That looks good. Let's see. Just testing the stream, make sure everything looks good. Make sure that it was still up. Awesome. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to keep taking inventory. Again, I've got the Munich liquid malt extract and the Pilsner liquid malt extract. A couple packages of hops, and last but not least, the star of the show, the yeast, K97. Very simple, very basic dry yeast. Just going to set that to the side there. A couple things I don't need, so I'm going to move them out of the way. I just had them so that I could store a little bit of stuff. What we're going to do next, I thought I was going to need these clamps, but I don't. Let me get these out of the way. Let's see. Wow, so things are looking good. Make sure this doesn't get over 160. So I'm just going to turn that off entirely. So I just put the grains in there about 2 or 3 minutes ago. So we're looking at about an hour on that. So around 310, 315, I'll be able to get the what would be wort after this to a boil, and then start getting the hops ready. Or sorry, the liquid malt ready. What I can do for this, I can go ahead and get one of the sides of the sink nice and hot, and then put these in it to make it an easier pour. So let me do that. I'm going to move the microphone over in hopes that it doesn't get too noisy. Actually, what I'll do is I'll just do one of these. So hopefully that's not too noisy, but I've got some water running. I'm going to get that hot. Once that's hot, I'll be able to put the liquid malt extract in it to make for an easier pour. After that, I guess it's a matter of, there's a couple housekeeping things that we can do, but let me go ahead and get the extract into the sink. It's time for a drink. I'll be right back. Okay. For those that were with me last live stream, this may look familiar. This is our nut brown ale that we brewed in the last live stream. So if you take a look at the channel history, you'll be able to see that my last live stream, I think it was 1 or 2 weeks ago now, that we brewed the nut brown ale. I didn't actually need to put any secondary fermentation on this. I say put any. I didn't have to subject this beer to secondary fermentation because it was, since it didn't need any dry hopping, there were no extra hops added towards the tail end. I didn't really need to. So luckily I was able to just let it sit in the primary fermenter for about 2 weeks, a week and a half I think is what it was. I noticed that the yeast stopped working, which pretty much means that there's no more bubbles in the airlock. The airlock is how CO2 that's produced by the yeast can get put. So when you see bubbles in the airlock, that tells you that it's working. When it stops, that either means it needs to be reactivated again with secondary fermentation and dry hops, or that it's ready. In this case, since there's no need for dry hopping, so we went ahead and put it in the keg, carbonated it, and then started drinking it. Hopefully, there'll be a video on that soon. But we'll cross that bridge later. Hello, hello. I love when family stops by the live stream. The beer, it's malty, it's a little sweet. It reminds me a little bit of something like Sam Adams Winter Lager, where it's not too thick. I wouldn't call it a dark beer. But you could definitely have a couple of these when it's nice and cold out. It's a bit hot right now in Austin. We did hit 80 or so degrees last week, which is marvelous. Actually, I can leave that off for now because it's still around 160. But yeah, the 80-degree weather made it perfect for this this brown ale. Okay, so let's keep going over the steps on the homebrew recipe. We've already got the grains in there. Got to make sure it doesn't go below 150. I'm gonna go ahead and stir the grains here in a few minutes just to make sure that, again, I get water throughout the entire bag of grains, making sure we get all the nutrients and sugar out of the grains. For those that may have been curious, the grains consisted of a couple different types of malt, Vienna malts, Crystal 60L, which I'm not familiar with, which I can do some research on, and Carafa 2, which is something else I can do research on. But I believe it's mostly just something like sugar additives, something to that effect. Don't quote me on that. But it's what gives a lot of the, I won't say sweetness, but the smell and alcohol content to the beer. This is really good. Glad I got it coming out of tap. Perfect. I'm really glad I got this giant bag. This makes it so much easier than using tongs like I was before. This is incredible. Why have I never done this? Wow, this smells good. Actually, yeah, I'll leave it off because it's still hovering around 160. I don't want to turn it up too much because I'd rather it get closer to 150 than go over 160. So I'm going to leave it alone for now. The heat is off. It is still pretty hot to the touch, so I mean, I'm not too worried about it getting cold. I just don't want to burn the grains. So after this sits for about an hour, we're going to keep doing that. I'm going to keep grabbing the bag, lifting it, letting it strain, stirring a little bit. I'm going to keep doing that every few minutes, every 5 or 10 minutes. After that, we'll be able to add the malt extract, get that to a boil, add the first round of hops, and then about 50 minutes later, add the second round of hops, chill it, pitch the yeast, and test it, then pitch the yeast, and then close it off. There isn't too much to do today. Last live stream, not only did we have brew day, but it was also bottling day. So that's really what took up a lot of time last live stream. I'm not having to do that today, so luckily we saved ourselves that time. It should be a simple brew day. It doesn't seem it's called Quick Oktoberfest Ale, and I think they did that on purpose. This is very easy. It's even easier than some other recipes that I've used, but it works really well. I think it's going to be a super simple recipe that I think anyone with the equipment can follow, which is what I like. Brewing can get complicated when you start to consider things like the all grain brewing, or even just larger amounts, even more than that. For home brewing, I don't know how feasible it is to do anything more than an all grain, like constant all grain batches. I think legally you can only brew 100 or 200 gallons. It's like 100 gallons of beer per adult in your household. So if you've got a household like mine where there are 4 adults, you could probably get away with being able to brew just massive amounts of beer, but there's generally no purpose for that unless you are a microbrewery or plan on being one. Get that out of the way there. There we go. Today, this live stream, I am promoting what we hope to be Austin's first black-owned brewery. There are a lot of breweries. I think there's 8,000 breweries across the U.S., and I think only 1% are black-owned. And there are none here in Austin. There's a lot of breweries. Over the last 2 or so weeks, myself, my girlfriend, we've been to probably 4 or 5 breweries, none of which are black-owned. So there's a very little representation in the beer space, but we're looking to change that. Shannon Harris is he's got about 5 or 6 years now of beer experience. He was a contracted head brewer, so essentially he would go from brewery to brewery. He's worked with some major breweries, helped them bring some of their beers to life, and he's going to be the head brewer of Urban Jungle Brewing. Again, what we hope to be Austin's first black-owned brewery. Any donations made at my site, that's justbrewing.com. Any donations made there will be donated to their Kickstarter to help open the doors. They're about $9,000 away from their goal with about 6 days left. So hopefully, I don't know how much of a dent we can put in it, but every dollar counts. I've already pledged my money, but with this live stream, I'm probably gonna donate again, depending on if I'm able to see the alerts here in the live stream. I may even do something like matching donations. That way we can kind of essentially double the money that gets sent. Again, I'm going to be donating for the second time, so I've already pledged some money to them, but I'm going to be doing it again because I want to help open this brewery. I think it's going to be exactly what Austin needs. Another brewery, which is almost never a bad thing, and one with some representation behind it. For more info on them, you can go to urbanjunglebrew.com. It has the link to their Kickstarter, as well as a little bit of information about Shannon Harris, what he's done, and a few of the projects that he's been fortunate enough to work with. Guinness is probably towards the top of that list. He was a part of a group that put out a beer called Black is Beautiful, which is this gorgeous looking dark beer that I could only wish to try to get my hands on. I want to do what I can to help, so hopefully if you are as interested as I am, we can go about bringing Austin's first black-owned brewery. Wow, that beer is good. Okay, let me finish cleaning up. I've just got grains all on the counter here. For those that are watching, what would you guys like to see brewed next? I know that it is still mid-September, but by the time this beer is done, it's going to be about three or so weeks before it's ready. So there's going to be probably in 2 more weeks when this gets into bottles, I'll have an opportunity to start brewing again. But I'm not sure what people want to see brewed or what those in the area may want to drink, because I can do something like a beer delivery if you're over 21. You can't pay for it. I'm willing to donate beer. So just let me know if there's something in particular, or if there's a certain beer style you would like me to try. One thing that's really hard to try is ciders. Cider beers are a little harder to brew at home, only because you're doing a lot of flavoring, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but generally it's expensive. Usually this recipe that I got here was like $30, pretty much, $35 if you count the yeast, because it didn't come with yeast. About $30 to $5, while a cider is going to run you like $85. So a massive jump, and it takes the beer from going to be about $1 a pop, because you can make about 40 beers, from about $1 a pop to about $2. So essentially doubling the cost of each beer, which is a lot. Which is a lot. I don't want to spend $100 on a recipe. I don't know about you, but I don't. I'm gonna go ahead and give this another stir. I need a better system for this. Or I could swap burners, but where's the fun in that? Don't know if you can see that at all. But it's very oatmeal-like. Very oatmeal-like. It's malt and sugar, I believe. So, the water is a very brown, very murky, about the color of this beer, actually, if that's any context. Whew. Cool. It was already starting to creep back up to that 160, so I went ahead and turned the heat off to get it back down. I don't want to burn the grains at all. I don't want to throw off my original gravity when we test it towards the end here. I want to get as much flavor out of this as possible, and if you get it too hot, you lose a bit of that one way or another. Stream check, back at it. That one looks fine, and that one looks fine. Cool. Oh, oops. Sorry about that. Awesome. What's up? Now that this one is empty, I'm going to go ahead and grab, I can pour, here, I'll just show you. One sec. I already grabbed a glass. In here is our lemon drop saison from our very first YouTube live stream. I think. I don't remember. But this is going to be, this was bought by and brewed for my Uncle Phil, who may or may not be watching, but he wanted a cider, and after looking into ciders and realizing that it's going to be 2 or 3 times the cost of a normal recipe, I opted into a lemon drop seasonal beer. I think it's really good. I've been told that it's pretty good. It took 2 weeks to ferment and about a week and a half to carbonate. The last live stream that we did when we bottled, this is what we were bottling. See if we can get a nice perfect pour here. It's all in the technique, the pour. My fellow bartenders know. Okay, so it's a little bit more foam than usual, a little more head than usual. I know exactly what I did wrong, and I will do better next time. Cheers. Actually, this is not finished yet. Water. The next thing I'm considering brewing, just due to the temperature that I have in the house and the closets that we have access to where I can store this beer, I can't stray too far away from ales. IPAs, very, very light. I've had American ales, which is essentially something like a slightly more flavorful Bud Light, Miller Lite type beer. There aren't very many that I have available to me, unfortunately, just because of the temperature. Ales, which is what most people drink, can ferment between 70 to 76 degrees, while lagers, which is almost on the other end, generally need to be stored between 50 to 65 degrees. And I just don't have that here. There are a couple ways to get around that. Something like using, there's a fermenting tool, if that's what you want to call it, called, it's equipment essentially, but it's called a Firmzilla, and it's essentially it is a canonical fermenter They call it canonical based on the way it's shaped. It's almost like a teardrop, an upside down teardrop. And from there, essentially what it does is as the yeast activates and starts to ferment inside the wort, the yeast will fall to the bottom instead of sticking to the sides of the bucket, or in this case, the Firmzilla, the fermenter. For those that have watched the last live stream, you may remember how much crust and just gunk was on the sides of the fermenter. Well, with something like the Firmzilla, it all settles to the bottom, it gets it out of the way, and you can actually pressurize the Firmzilla. And essentially what that does is instead of, it expedites the process, going from like a 2-week fermentation to about a few days, 5 days usually, something like that. And that's by using pressure, hooking it up to a CO2 canister, much like what I have in the kegerator. You can essentially force ferment. It kind of speeds things up, and you can be a little more, it's a little more lenient on the temperature when you're pressurizing it. The yeast isn't so picky under pressure, and it just gets to work, opposed to having to be at a certain temperature to be able to work with something like an ale or a lager. The Firmzilla, you just go for it, put the wort inside, yeast on top, and then you close it off, seal it, add pressure, and then check on it in a few days. It's gonna fly through fermentation. Okay, so first impressions on the beer, first impressions on camera, on the Lemon Drop Saison. It's about the color you would expect. Let me get the logo facing. There we go. Ooh. Perfect. It's about the color you would expect. A nice orangish, like a pale orange color. Still has that awesome lemon smell. I don't want to say sour. I don't want to say bitter either. I'll say closer to sour than bitter, but it's got a little tingle to it, and I think that's just from the lemon, almost fighting back. Super light, super refreshing. This is perfect for Austin, the current Austin weather, with it being that 80, 90 degrees. This is perfect for it. Easily, if it weren't, this is closer to 6%, if my memory serves me correctly. I didn't actually get the final gravity rating, so I'm not actually able to measure that, unfortunately. But I do think it's hovering around 6%. So if this weren't so high, if it was closer to like that 4%, this would definitely be what we call a patio pounder. Perfect for outdoors when you're in the sun. You're on the boat, grab maybe 4 of these and you'll be set. Of course, with it being a 6%, most people would probably have 2 before they can start feeling a little funny. Around this house, we can probably go through like 3, maybe even 4 before things start getting a little weird. But for the light drinkers, definitely 1 or 2 of these. If you're outside, maybe pair it with some water. That way, you don't dehydrate yourself. It smells really good. I think my favorite thing about the beer is the way it smells. Mostly because a lot of the flavor that you get generally comes from the smell of it. Your taste buds can only taste so many things, while smell kind of accentuates the taste that you get and can help differentiate this sour thing versus this sour thing versus the bitter thing. And there's a lot that goes into it. It's a science if you think about it. I'll just keep spilling this. Wow. Don't forget to hydrate. Gotta love it. All right, back at it. Stream check. Cool. I'm doing what's called a multi-stream, which uploads my stream to both YouTube and Twitch, which is a first for me. So I have to keep an eye on it to make sure that it all looks good. Let's see. Oops. Cool. I'll move this out of the way. So you won't find the glasses, these pint glasses, in the merch store yet. They're from a different vendor than what my merch store is through. So I don't know how I will be able to get these, the glasses through the merch store. I may have to do that independently from home, which will be buying them already customized and then shipping them myself. There's a lot of logistics behind that, but hopefully, if all goes well, we can make that happen in the coming future. But for now, feel free to visit justbrewing.com/merch. If you want to see high quality t-shirts, much like the one that I'm wearing right now. Again, all proceeds from the channel, or rather the merch store, are going to go to Stand Up to Cancer, which I do think that I have a link for somewhere. Apologize if it's not in the live stream channel description, but you will see it on the video description when it gets uploaded sometime after the live stream. I'm going to go ahead and stir the, I'm going to go ahead and stir the grains again. So we're getting at about 153 or so, 154. I'm going to turn the heat on just barely while I'm stirring to kind of bring the temperature back up so it can start falling from 160 again. So it's visibly a little more dark. It's a little darker than it was before. And that's just going to be because the grains are getting a chance to work more. And it's going to keep getting a little darker. Once we get the malt in it, it's probably going to be pretty dark. But it being an Oktoberfest, once we add more water in it for the fermentation process, it's probably going to clear up just a little bit. Cool. I'm going to leave that on for maybe 2 or 3 more minutes, just so that I can get that heat up a little bit more. This beer, when it's done, is probably going to be about the color of the brown ale that's in the kegerator right now. I do plan on bottling the Oktoberfest, and then the beer after the Oktoberfest is probably going to go into when that time comes. I'm probably going to do a similar live stream to that of the last one, where it's bottling and brewing. I may find a way to try to expedite that if that means having a little help, or starting the live stream halfway through the bottling process, just because I don't want to subject my viewers, listeners, friends, and family to that same just filling the bottles is a little repetitive, especially being the person doing it. I would hate to be the person watching that person do it. Doesn't seem very entertaining to me, and I don't want to subject people to that. So next time around, I'm probably going to start brew day maybe at capping or halfway through the bottling process. Just that way, it's a little less repetitive. Granted, what we're doing now isn't crazy engaging, but we're having a good time. At least I am. Gonna go ahead and get that back off. I don't want it to get too hot, but I definitely don't want it to get too cold. Those can stay here for now. So I'm just double checking, making sure that I'm not missing anything, because I'm often wrong about things. I make a lot of mistakes. So I want to be a little more careful this time around. I'm actually gonna test the gravity using my hydrometer, which I'll show you what that looks like. I've got a beaker, this guy here, a cylindrical beaker, that I can test the gravity, and that's what's going to help us get our alcohol by volume rating. Cool. So this should be a really simple brew day. It's going to take a little bit. We're about halfway into the steeping the grains. We're about halfway into that. I've already got the wort chiller out, so once we're done with the hop boil, we'll be able to get right to chilling it. Awesome, yeah, this is going to be super simple. Very, very simple. Let's see. I'm going to be using this bucket to ferment, mostly because it's the clearest. I can actually see through it. The other buckets that I have, this one, you can't see it, but it's on the floor. This one is a bottling bucket, so it's got a spigot on the front. The other two buckets that I have, though they work, they're not as clear, it's not as easy to see through, so it makes it really hard to get measurements out of it. And I have to use this in order to get it up to just over 5 gallons. Since I'm going to be testing it, I need a little more than 5 gallons. My ideal volume at the end when I'm bottling is going to be 5 gallons. So I want to make sure that it starts above 5 gallons. That way, when I do things like testing the gravity, I'm not losing any beer out of it. Cool. That's moving. This is moving. Just going to clean things up. I figured now would be a good time to go over Northern Brewer's starter guide, which came with my beginner kit. You can kind of see that it's a little used because I've had this for about almost a year now. Wow, next month will make a year since I've been homebrewing. That's insane. Actually, sometime in November, I think. I don't remember. But really, what's really nice about this is it comes with every beginner kit. And it gives you a breakdown of the ingredients, the process, essentially what it takes to make beer. Beer consists of malt or grains, hops, yeast, and water. That's it. It's a relatively simple process, and beer has been around for thousands of years. But the fun is in drinking it. Brewing it's really the yeast is the brewer, and we just activate the yeast. What's really nice about this is it gives you a detailed explanation as to what's going on, how certain things work, how fermentation works, how the siphon works. I brought this back out so that I could kind of get back to the basics. I noticed that with some of my last brews, they haven't been up to my own standard. This is good, but there are certain parts throughout the brewing process that I wasn't crazy happy about. So I want to make sure that each brew that I have gets better than the last. And to do that, I'm making sure that I refer to the starter guide because I'm still very much a beginner when it comes to all of this. There's quite a bit that I don't know. I'm still learning kind of every day, every brew day. And I just want to be better. Steps on how to cleanse properly, how to sanitize things, what fermentation actually means, what bottling day will consist of, and there's a guarantee card with information on how to contact them if you have questions. But a few things coming to the channel. One was the announcement of the website, that's justbrewing.com, and the merch store, that's justbrewing.com/merch. You'll see that right there. That's just a couple of the, a few of the items that you see. There's t-shirts, mugs, a towel, a neck cover for this time in the pandemic that we're in. There's a little bit of stuff in there. I do plan on adding more to it as we get things moving. Hoodies, stuff like that. There's quite a bit that I can actually choose from. It's just a matter of what people want. And right now, I do have a new variation of this t-shirt. This one was the prototype, if you will. I ordered it to see to check the quality from the vendor, just to make sure that everything was good, and it looks great. It works. But if you check the merch store now, things are a little bit different. The shirt's a little different. It does have the name on it. Again, all proceeds from the merch store are going to go to Stand Up to Cancer. They are essentially all about cancer research, providing those funds to treatment facilities to help further the advancement of cancer research. We want to make sure that we can do what we can. I've had friends and I've had family members affected by it, so I want to, if I can do one good thing, I'm going to go for it. I'm essentially just going to be taking the proceeds from it once a month and taking it directly to the charity. I may screenshot when I do that just to prove that I'm actually doing it. I don't know that people care to see that, or I just want to make sure that people know that I'm genuine about this and I don't want money from this. I'm going to put it somewhere else. The first place is going to be cancer research. Again, donations from this video, if you go to my website, justbrewing.com, and make a donation there, those are going to be sent to Urban Jungle Brewing. It's going to go to their Kickstarter to help open the Austin's first Black-owned brewery. Wow, that was a mouthful. Just one second. Let's see how things are looking. That looks good. That looks good. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and check the temperature again. We're creeping just around 150, so I'm going to bring it right back up and do another round of stirring. We're about 20 minutes away. Wow, it's even darker now. Wow. It's hard to gauge what it's gonna smell like. I mean, I can tell you what it smells like now, but that's not what it's gonna smell like coming out of the bottle. It's just very, very malty. I mean, very green. Just smells like wheat. It's like sweet wheat. Like you can really, really smell you can smell some of the sugar. Yeah, I think the best way to describe it right now would be sweet wheat, which is weird, but that is what it sounds like. That is what it smells like. Okay, put that back. Wow, so we're creeping up on an hour. We're almost ready to for the next step. The next step is going to be adding the liquid extract to the wort. Once we do that, it may take a little bit, but I'll still be engaged here. That's not going to change. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Let's see. Wow, cool. All right, so now that we've got the grains moving, these are almost going to be ready. I'm going to go ahead and get the extract out of the sink. Actually, I'm going to leave it in there for now, just because I don't want to mess with the consistency of it right now. If I take it out and set it on the counter, it's going to start to harden just a little bit, and I don't want it to harden at all. I don't want to use the word harden. It's just going to get thicker, rather. Not harden, but it's just going to start to get thicker again. I want it to be relatively thin. I want it to be relatively thin just so that when I'm pouring it, it's a little bit easier. It's not necessarily hard to pour, but the thicker it is, it's going to be harder to make sure that it dissolves properly while I'm stirring it. It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. For those that have been with the live stream, a couple that have visited the live stream, the last ones at least, they'll know stirring is we do a lot of stirring and a lot of cleaning on this channel, mostly because I make a lot of messes. But that's okay. I'm just gonna we gotta power through it, really. So I still have the heat on. It's slowly but surely picking up, getting a little more. We're at 157 right now. And I just gotta keep an eye on it. I'm gonna leave the heat on for just a little bit, just so that when I turn it off one last time, it's able to get closer to that 160. It's closer to the 160. If I turn it off now, it's probably going to get to about 150 or so when this steeping is done, and I just want it to be a little bit. I want it to be a little bit better. Okay, so the live chat is there. It's just very, very, very small. So let me try to fix that. Oh, I guess I can't fix that. I have an idea. All right, so I am testing the chat box on the bottom right corner, right there. So if those that are watching can send a chat, that would be great. That would help me figure out the size of the chat box. I want to make sure it stays in the bubbles and that cool graphic I have there. So hopefully if I'm able to do that, that should work. This I'll leave off for now because that's just going to add more to it. Cool. Awesome. So now that we're getting the grains a bit closer to being done, we're almost to the point where we're going to be able to add the malt, the liquid malt at least, the extract. Oh yeah, I need to add more hot water to this. 1 second. My apologies for the noise. Cool. So now I have a bit more hot water in the. Okay, so the font is almost there. Let me keep the font. Let me turn the font up a bit more. Let's see. Just gonna turn the font up. I apologize. Awesome. So that should take care of that. I could try. I'll maybe do that off stream, but I'll probably end up fixing that right there to be a little taller to fit the chat box a little better. Right now, I don't know if it's the best size, but that's the benefit of live streaming, is testing it as you go. But we will get there. We're at about 158, almost 160 there on the brew. So I went ahead and turn it down a little bit. So where we're at now, sorry about that. We are almost done. We've got about 10 minutes left on our steeping process. Doing another stir. Oops. I'm just draining some of the grains now, just to make sure that water is getting all the way through it. At the end of our steeping timer, here in about 10 minutes, I'm gonna get a few cups of water and pour it onto the grains, just to make sure that the rest of any nutrients that are on it that are still inside, I want to make sure to get all of that. So I'm going to pour the water on top of the grains, just to get a little bit more, again, the nutrients and flavor, sugar, get that out of the grains, out of the malt. And then we're going to add the liquid malt extract. That's probably going to be the least interesting part of the process, but that's what the live stream is for. Just gonna make a quick post about the live stream. Let me test one other thing real quick while we're at it. Awesome. Wow. Having a good time. So we're staying at the expected temperature right now. We've got 5-6 minutes left on the steeping process. After it's ready, we're going to add the liquid malt extract, stir all of that in. Then once that's done, we're going to start the hop boil, which is a standard 60 minutes of a low rolling boil. We're going to start with the first round of hops, the tradition hops for bittering, and then with 10 minutes left on the hop boil, that's 50 minutes later, we're going to add the herb sucker hops, and this is going to be the flavoring. I don't want to open these yet. I'll smell them just before we pour them in. I really want to smell them so that we can know, at least have an idea of the aroma that the beer is going to have, at least the hops in the beer are going to have. Smelling and tasting the things as you go through is a great way to have an idea of what it looks like, what it tastes like as you pour it. It's just a better way to refine your palate. Water. Let's see what we have here. Okay. Awesome. Temperature is about where we expect it. I'm going to turn it. Actually, I think it should be okay for the next 5 minutes. The steeping process is just about done. We've got about 5 minutes left on it. Once it's done, we can add the extract. It's pushing through 154 or so degrees right now. I don't want to turn it on because then it's going to start to. I don't want it to get too hot. So it should be okay for the next few minutes. I can go ahead and get the water ready so that so I'm just going to pour the water on top of the bag to get any extra nutrients and sugars out of the grain. And then we're going to turn the heat off, and then we're going to add the extract. Cool. Awesome. I'm not going to mess with that just yet, mostly because we're going to be adding more water and stirring shortly. Four cups of water. Again, we are going to be using the wort chiller, which I've got where you can't see it right now. But when that time comes, I'm going to set up one of the intermission graphics so that I can move the stream over there, over closer to my back door where I have a water hose waiting. I'm going to hook up the water hose to the wort chiller, run cool water through the wort chiller, and thus transferring the heat from the wort to the wort chiller, or at least the water running to the wort chiller, drastically cooling the wort. What's up, James? Good to see you, man. Thanks for stopping in. I hope the Twitch live stream looks good. I'm doing a multi-stream, so I've got it on YouTube and on Twitch. Hopefully it works. If it doesn't, I may need to tweak it for next time, but hopefully the things look good. Thanks for stopping in, man. Feel free to check out that. I know you helped me with the merch store, but feel free to check it out. Let me know what you think about the new merch store. I changed some of the graphics on the t-shirts since the last time I had you take a look at it. So let me know what you think. Next, what we're doing is we've got a couple minutes left on the steeping process. I'm sure you may remember that, but essentially I'm just steeping the grains and the malt, much like a tea bag. So I've got it in a nylon bag right now, sitting in hot water. Here in about 3 minutes or so, I'm going to pull that out, pour some water on top of it, just to get any extras out of the malt, and then we're going to start stirring in the liquid malt extract. I may need to stir that in a little bit more than normal, only because my previous brews have not been where they're supposed to be, let's say, and I do not want I want this beer to be better than the last, and by not taking that step, it would not be better than the last. So I'm going to make sure that it's going to be as clear as possible before I get the hops in it. That may require a little extra work, but that's all right. I'm not opposed to working a little bit harder these days. I need a refill. I'll be right back. Alrighty. So I went ahead and poured a little bit more of the brown ale in a frosted glass. As you can tell, it is very, very dark, but that was the plan. I mean, it doesn't taste it doesn't taste like a stout would, but you're playing some League while you watch. Hey, that's completely alright. I will happily educate you while you style on these fools, quote unquote. We are about done with the steeping process. We're at 150, so I'm gonna go ahead and take this off. So I'm letting the water that's in the grain bag, I'm just letting it drain real quick. Let me confirm I'm gonna have to deal with that again. But I want to make sure that the water, it says hot water, so let me get the water hot before pouring it on there. Because this is not hot anymore. Alrighty. James, you said the t-shirt looks good. I appreciate it. There was a lot of renditions. Those here can vouch for that, but I probably went through like 4 different designs before, and they weren't huge differences, but about 4 different types of t-shirts before I settled on the one that you see in the store. If you like it, I'm glad you do. Feel free to, if you grab one, if you end up purchasing one, the proceeds from the t-shirt, from anything in the merch store, are all going to go to Stand Up to Cancer. They're a nonprofit that funnels their donations for cancer research. So hopefully the idea is that with everything, any product purchased at the merch store is going to help go towards cancer research. Any donations made right there on my website, justbrewing.com, those donations will be taken and sent to Urban Jungle Brewery, which is Austin, which we hope to be Austin's first black-owned brewery. There are none, as you can tell by this. In hopes that this would be the first. There are currently none, but any donations made through my website right now will be sent to Urban Jungle to help open their doors. Info on Urban Jungle Brewery can be found at urbanjunglebrew.com. Sorry, I don't have very many of these links written out right now, so a lot of them are up here. Which is probably the worst place to have them, arguably. So again, I'm going to let the grains drain here. I'm going to go ahead and pour the hot water. Twist the bag a little. Come on. I'm just going to get every drop that I can out of this. It's a little annoying, but I want every drop. Every drop is a little more flavor, a little more sugar, which means a little more alcohol. This may take just a little bit longer, but wow, this smells so good. The grains, the malt, it's so sweet. I like it. Just waiting for it to drain. Just waiting for it to drain. Let's see, what does that say? Oh, yeah, there are about 1% of all breweries in the U.S., which is there's between 6,000 to 8,000. Of all breweries in the U.S., less than 1% are black-owned. And I think even fewer than that are owned by women. Independence Brewery, which is here in Austin, is owned by a woman. Co-founded by a woman. If I could, I'd love to meet them. I've reviewed their beers, but we may do something with the video. I have yet to decide what to do with the video for it. But there is a little bit of representation in the space as far as minorities, but none in the POC range of representation. Awesome, so this is about done. I'm gonna put this in the sink. I'm going to go ahead and grab the first round of extract, which is the Munich extract. This right here. I'm going to bring it to a boil first, so let me close this back up, get the heat going. The recipe calls for it to be at a boil first, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm also going to go ahead and take the liquid malt extract and get this back up to a good temperature. So I'm going to turn the water back on here. The water is a little hot, but not hot enough to make a substantial difference. Apologies. So now I've got much hotter water in the sink. That's going to make pouring the liquid malt extract much, much easier. I'm going to be pouring a couple, it's a total of 4 pounds. Oh, 6.5 pounds. 6.5 pounds of extract. I'm going to be pouring that into our boil here. As you would imagine, not that it's hard, but it's not easy. So, just going to get this to a boil. Once it's to a boil, we can add the extract in. We're going to take it off of heat, so I'm probably going to swap burners. But by doing that, it's going to make it easier for the extract not to burn. Much like the grains, we don't want it to be too hot. But the benefit of the extract, I don't want to use the word careless, but you can be a little more loose with it. Not too loose though. You don't want giant chunks of extract or malt in it. Otherwise, it's just going to make it a bit hard to see through. That's mostly it. You don't get as much flavoring or sugar out of it because you lose quite a bit of that because it burns. But just checking a couple things, making sure everything is still good. Just going to plug the website again. Hopefully, eventually, I'll be able to do all of this from justbrewing.com. But right now, that's kind of a middleman just for the donations, just to get to the charity. But any donations made at justbrewing.com will go towards Urban Jungle Brewing. Any proceeds from the merch store are going to go to Stand Up to Cancer. Again, you'll find the information link in the video that gets published after this live stream. So check the channel again in a couple hours and you'll see it in the description if it's not there now. I don't remember if I put it in there earlier. I probably didn't, but at least I've got the description there. I will put the information link up with the video when it's published. Sorry, my neighbors are doing something and I'm nosy. Or at least I thought I saw something, like they're playing ball or something. I saw something go over the fence. Rather, I saw something on their side go over the fence. Nothing came into my yard. Luckily. Not this time, at least. I'm just going to open this up just real quick. Because one thing that I'm not really sure on is the malt and the grains. Malt is in either grain form or extract form, which is what you're going to see here shortly. Malts are like cereal grains. Well, hold on. It says malts are cereal grains like barley, oats, and wheat that are steeped during the brewing process to extract fermentable sugars, color, and flavor. We're going to skip most of this step and use a malt extract at the start of our boil. The malt's flavors are sometimes described as bready, toasty, nutty, caramel, toffee, coffee, and chocolate, to name a few. Most importantly, malt extract provides the sugar that yeast will turn to wort. Most importantly, malt extract provides the sugar that yeast will use to turn wort into alcohol. Sorry, there's like a parenthesis, like part in parentheses there that I, for whatever reason, read like the end of the sentence, but it wasn't the end of the sentence. But as far as the malt is usually grains, but you get, as you boil it, sugar and stuff, it produces sugar, and then the yeast uses that sugar to create alcohol. And that's almost what makes beer beer. We are far from a boil, pushing 170. We're not quite there yet. Once it gets to a boil, I'll be able to add the extract, but for now, Really, it's just a waiting game. What I can do on the brown ale, since I did not need to go through secondary fermentation with it, we were able to go from brew day to pouring in about a week and a half. That's the benefit of using something like a kegerator. If I was to pair the kegerator with the Firmzilla that I mentioned earlier, which is a canonical fermenter, it is essentially in the shape of a wide teardrop where it's very, very wide and big in the top part and then goes to a cone on the very bottom. By doing that, it's able to, the yeast doesn't stick to the sides, it'll actually just fall to the bottom. And in doing so, and added with pressure, can actually expedite the fermenting process, which would usually take you from about a week and a half to 2 weeks to a matter of 4 to 5 days to about a week. That would drastically change what I put, like how I brew beer that goes into the keg, because I could essentially go from 1 week without beer in the keg to the next week with beer in the keg, which is a huge deal. It's a big deal. Right now, it's taking me about 2 to 3 weeks to get beer in the keg. About 2 weeks. Even to bottle them, you would go from about 6 weeks, which is generally about how long it takes, about 5 to 6 weeks in beer out of a bottle, to about 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks maybe. I won't say 3 weeks max because some need longer, but about 3 weeks, give or take a few days. Be that 2.5 to about 3.5 to 4 weeks. Between 2.5 to 4 weeks is how long it would take if I had a Firmzilla, and I was bottling after. It may be on I may consider getting one in the future, but as of right now, that's not in the cards. Eventually I may, if I'm able to. If that means learning something new and expediting the beer process, the brewing process, I'm willing to consider it. With how fast the lemon drop saison went, I mean it's almost completely gone. I've had friends and family that love it. People here love it. My uncles, whom I brewed it for, they love the beer. I gave them a couple 6-packs, maybe 2.5 6-packs, and I don't know how far along it is, which left us here at the house a couple 6-packs, and that's almost gone amongst 4 of us. Granted, there's 2 of them, and there's 4 people here. That's almost gone. Oh, what's up, Ethan? Good to see you. Yeah, this is my official t-shirt. Now, this was the prototype, so this isn't what the t-shirt in the merch store, justbrewing.com/merch looks like, right there. This is not what the current rendition looks like. This was the prototype. I just wanted to see what it looked like with the logo on it, with the texture of the t-shirt from the vendor. And it looks good. It feels good. I like it. I've already washed it once, and it still fits just fine. The others, now that you should see in there, should only be better. I wanted, there are people that are in this that know what this logo looks like, but anyone else probably wouldn't. So I figured if I put my name on it, the channel name, you would have an idea. On the t-shirts, I've actually got a QR code. I forgot about that. The QR code takes you to the channel. On the new t-shirts, it's a bit bigger. It's easier to use. I tested it on the shirt and it works, but there's no reason not to have it bigger. So I've got it much bigger on the new t-shirts. If someone asks you about the shirt, you can just point to the QR code saying, hey, it's got a QR code that takes you to the channel. Feel free to check it out. The only reason I have it doing that is because every video I sponsor or at least promote some charity or nonprofit. I can't guarantee the QR code would always go to the nonprofit or charity that I'm promoting. So I've decided to have it go to the channel, which if you click on a video, in the description we'll have a link to the donation, the charity or nonprofit that I'm funneling my donations to. Hopefully it works. It's a little bit clunky, for lack of a better term, but I like it. I really think the idea of the QR code makes it easy for someone to interact, especially if someone says, hey, that's a cool shirt. I like to drink beer, or like I see that it says Just Brewing. What does that mean? If there's anyone that takes the and runs with it, there's at least a link to go along with it now. we're almost to brewing. We're getting closer to 200 degrees. We're about 190 now. Here in a bit, this will be ready for the liquid malt extract that's sitting in hot water in my sink right now. Friendly reminder that all proceeds from the merch store, justbrewing.com/merch, all proceeds from the merch store will go to Stand Up for Cancer, a nonprofit based on essentially just trying to get the funds to go towards cancer research, and any donations made at justbrewing.com, my website, will go to help open what we hope to be Austin's first black-owned brewery. There's a lot of good breweries in the area. I've been to a small handful. I've picked up T-shirts from a small handful of them, just because I love what they do and I want to contribute. But this will be Austin's first black-owned brewery, which is kind of a big deal when it comes to inclusion and representation in the space of minorities. Just trying to do things and being out there. It makes it a little hard when there's very little relatable material out there. So we're hoping to change that. I'm going to do what I can to help. I've already pledged my money, but along with all the donations that I'm going to send after this video, I'm also going to pledge again in hopes to help close their $9,000 or $8,000 gap. They were hoping for a $60,000 goal. They're at about $51,000 or $52,000 at the last time that I checked yesterday. So hopefully, with the help of this video, people like myself and you, we will be able to help open Austin's first black-owned brewery. Very quick stream check. Just going to check the both live streams just to make sure they're running. Cool. Things look good so far. Awesome. So we've got about maybe 10 or so minutes on the boil just to get it boiling. Once it's boiling, we can then start. Once it's boiling, we can add the liquid malt extract that I've got in the sink. What's really nice about the nylon bag I used earlier is it's reusable. Some of them are just some type of mesh material. I don't know specifically what it is, now that I think about it. But with this one being nylon, I can just dump the grains out, dump the malt out, wash it down, and then use it again. I don't have to worry about it. Some recipes do come with the grain bag, but not all of them do. The benefit of this one is it's huge, so I can use that for the 10-pound grains that I have in a cabinet on the floor. Here, I'll show you what that looks like. So for a recipe that I have, this is what the grains look like. So this is about 10 pounds of grains, and it is for a clone all-grain homebrew recipe for a very, very popular beer. It's called Arrogant Bastard. This is the clone recipe for it. So it's essentially the same beer, but the brewing company that made Arrogant Bastard hasn't released the recipe, which completely makes sense. But there are people that are out there that know what things taste like, or they may have an idea of what's in the recipe. This is a clone recipe, so it's essentially that recipe, as close to that recipe as you'll get, but it's all grain, so it's different than what you saw earlier. You're not going to find any liquid extract. This is all grain. So you're going to take this massive bag, boil it, do a little bit, but it's essentially you're boiling it for however long. And once it's done, you transfer it essentially to get it to where we are now, or where we will be when the liquid malt extract is added and then stirred in. Once all that dissolves and is added to the wort, that's what all of that's going to get out of this. Now, I don't have the equipment to boil this, to mash this. That's what it's called. There's all grain equipment kits that you would go from taking what I have here and upgrading that to be able to brew something like this that has 10 pounds of grains. Some have way more. I have the recipe on the side for when I get the equipment, but it's a few $100s top to bottom. That's what I know it will cost. Those that have been around for my kegerator woes, there's the cost that you know you're going to incur, and there's the cost that you have no clue you're going to incur until you get there. So that could go from $300 to $500. The kegerator went from $150 to about $250. So it was pretty much an extra $100 or so in unexpected costs that I had, which is still half the price of a regular kegerator. So I'll take that any day. When I say regular kegerator, I mean a kegerator you can buy straight from a factory that shows up ready to go. What I have is essentially a mini fridge that's been fitted to fit a keg, sanitizer, keg, CO2 canister, that for whatever reason in my head made sanitizer, and a little bit extra stuff. I can show that at some other point. If you watch the end of the first live stream, I believe there's a brief. I have it time-stamped, so feel free. But I do think that I have it. I have a little bit of information on how I've got the kegerator, where I bought it, how it works. But I will probably upload a separate kegerator video for when the next beer that I have goes into it. But the video will be specifically on the kegerator, rather than how it will be a video about the beer that's in the kegerator. So hopefully I'll be able to make that distinction and explain what that is and how it works and how it benefits myself and mostly my brother, who also lives here. We're able to drink beer on tap, which is hard to come by these days, these troubling days of 2020. So we're just past 210 degrees. We're almost at boiling. Once we get to boiling, I'll be able to add the extract. And it looks like Sam is here now. Hello, Sam. Thanks for stopping in. Right now, we are in step, essentially like 3 of 6 or 7 for today. What we've done so far is we've put grains in the bag, in a nylon bag, boiled those grains, or not boiled, but let those grains steep, much like you would tea. Stirred it, poured water over it just to make sure that we get everything out of the grains. From there, that's where we are now. And then after that, we'll be adding liquid extract to it. After that, we're going to be adding hops to it. And then we're going to chill it and put it into a fermenter. And that's pretty much it. There's a couple small steps we're going to take in between. One of which being adding a wort chiller, which is going to drastically cut down the time of bringing the wort, which is unfermented beer. It's essentially just beer with all the ingredients. It's essentially water with the ingredients for beer before yeast. After it ferments, that's when it's officially beer. When it's got alcohol content, that's when it's beer. But right now, we're just going to get this. We're going to get this to a boil, and then we're going to move on to the next step. I am drinking Northern Brewer's Nut Brown Ale, which is what we brewed in the last couple live streams. If you check the last live stream, that's what I brewed. I had one earlier, was a Lemon Drop Saison. That was brewed in the live stream previous to that. Next live stream, as you would imagine, is going to be another brew day. But it's probably going to be the beer for the next, the beer that's going into my kegerator next, as well as kegging, not kegging, but bottling this beer that you're seeing. So once this is done fermenting, which is going to take about a week or two, we're going to bottle it and carbonate it. After it's carbonated, then it'll be ready to drink. You may be thinking, what's it like before it's carbonated? Very much like, well, when a soda is flat, usually it's the other way around because it shows up carbonated But if it's flat, that means it's been exposed to oxygen for an extended period of time. After that, when you taste it, it's just flavored water. It's just soda flavored water. That's kind of what it's like before fermentation. Now, the cool thing about when they're sealed, they can kind of stay sealed and carbonated forever, in theory. It may get to a point, too, if the conditions are right, it may pop. That doesn't happen very often in situations like this, where it's just going to be sitting in a closet for a couple weeks and then opened within about a month. When it comes to beer on the shelves, it may be a couple months before it's actually opened, but even still, that's nothing compared to like how long it may take for anything bad to happen. So what we're doing now is this is gonna get we're gonna ferment this. It's gonna take about 2 weeks, and then we're gonna bottle it, which is also gonna take about 2 weeks. This one, well, maybe about a week and a half. Some take longer depending on what's inside it and the yeast. Some yeast ferments at a higher temperature, some at a lower. What we're working with right now can ferment between 70 to 76 degrees. I've tested it, and the closets that I have access to, just to leave and no one open that door for a while, those are in 73 to 77 degrees. Perfect for brewing beer at home. There are a lot of beers I want to try, but just can't, based on the temperature of the house. Now, you may be thinking, just get the house lower, just lower the temperature on the AC. But this is a relatively, it's not a huge house by any means, but it's bigger than most. And to do that would be expensive and not be worth it. Now, if it's cold outside and I have the AC on, then we can maybe get the house below 65 degrees. But to do that currently, it's going to take a lot. Like a lot. Way more than I'm willing to commit to. Okay. So this is boiling. I'm going to go ahead and take the heat, take it off of heat. I'm going to move it over so it's completely off the heat, not just the heat that was below it. Cool. Now we're going to add the liquid malt extract. The recipe calls for a specific one first. Maybe not necessarily, but it just says to add both. But it says the Pilsen first, so I'm just going to add the Pilsen. We're going to go ahead and add that in there. Yeah, below 65 degrees is a bit much. I agree. But for something like a lager, those beers generally need between 50 to 60, sometimes just below, essentially below 70 degrees. There are some beers that require lower than that, depending on the yeast, there's a lot that goes into it. But for what I like to drink, for what the people around me like to drink, for what I like to make, what's easiest to make, that's why we stick with ales. This is a brown ale, the Saison that I have in the fridge that we brewed in the first live stream. That one is that one's an ale. Everything that's come out of my kegerator is an ale. It's just because I don't have it. Yeah, exactly. Getting it out the house, a 5-bedroom house below 65 degrees is a bit much. But if I had the Firmzilla, I wouldn't have to worry about that. By adding pressure to the fermenting process, you can be a little more loose with the temperature. So this lager, or whatever it is you're brewing, may generally need to be at the 65, 68 degrees to ferment properly. But by adding pressure, you almost force it to carbonate. Not carbonate, I apologize. You force it to ferment. By doing that, you don't need to let it ferment because you're making it ferment. So I'm going to go ahead and add the liquid malt extract. If I believe correctly, it's the Pilsen. That's going to be the one without the label. Okay, so this is nothing crazy. It's very much like syrup. It's very sweet. Kind of show you what that looks like without spilling it everywhere. But It's got a syrup consistency to it. I'm gonna go ahead and taste it. I'm gonna be wild here. Okay, it's not as sweet as I thought. It was kind of sweet at the beginning, but it wasn't after that. It's still very rich. I don't know specifically what's in it. As you can tell, there's no label, so I don't have anything other than Pilsner Light LME, liquid malt extract. But I can tell that this beer, at least using this malt, any beer with this malt is not going to be sweet. Which is crazy. You might be thinking, beer isn't sweet. Some are. There are beers out there that are sweet. That's the cool thing about beer. Very interesting. I like it. So I'm going to start pouring and stirring. This is what I like to call the workout of Brew Day. Just because you're going to be holding this receptacle of just, I won't say heavy, but just thick, rich syrup. Oh, that's alright. I'll clean and sanitize that later. But I'm going to keep adding the malt extract. You don't want it to be too thick as it pours, because if it doesn't dissolve correctly, there's going to be kind of like, you may not taste the difference, but you'll see the difference. You'll be able to see small particles floating. And with professional beer that you buy out of the restaurant or at a gas station or anything like that, out of the brewery, you're not going to see that. So when I'm at home, when I'm drinking, I don't like to see that in the beer that I drink, so I try to make beer that I like to drink. Which means it's going to be clear, it's going to be clean, it's going to be done properly. So you just sometimes have to take that extra step. I'm going to be a little crazy here. The mic that I'm using has a very long cable, so I'm just going to move the mic over so you can hear me better. That way I don't have to shout. Easy. Back to it. So I'm about halfway through with pouring this batch of liquid malt extract. Hopefully this isn't too annoying. I'll try not to clang or bang against this pot, the kettle, but no promises. So I'm just going to keep stirring here. I'm going to be a little more careful. Again, if you stir but aren't careful enough, it may be a murky, foggy looking beer. And there are some beers that are meant to look this way. If you've ever heard of a Hefeweizen, which is generally they're unfiltered. The good ones are generally, but they're very light. And usually you can kind of, depending on what kind of grain or malt that they use, you may see some of it floating around. Depending on the yeast that they use, then you may see it floating around. Some beers, it works, and that's what you want to see, because that shows that they're using the right malt or grain. In this, that's not the case, so I don't want to see anything floating around. So I'm going to grab some of it and look at it on the giant ladle I have. Sorry, my glasses are fogging up, so that makes it very hard. Keep stirring. And it doesn't look to be very foggy at all. I don't see very much of the grain or extract. I'm going to grab some of it out of the... Yeah, look at that. I'm getting quite a bit just by scraping it off the sides of the canister here. Yeah, exactly. So the reason that I'm doing that is I want to make sure to maximize... I spent money on this recipe, and I want to get every drop that I can out of it. Now, feel free to you don't have to do this if you're doing this at home. If you're a person that doesn't want to go through the effort of scraping the sides of the extract container. but I want to get every drop that I can. I want this to be as close as to how the head brewer, the brewmaster, wanted it to be. So I'm going to do everything I can. And if that means scraping the inside of the container, I will scrape the inside of the container. I'm going to stir this up a bit more to make way for the next round of malt extract. I'm going to do another check just to make sure. Ooh. And it's a little, I can see a little bit of the malt, so I'm going to keep stirring. I can tell it hasn't dissolved entirely, so I'm going to keep stirring here. It should be better by the time, since I'm going to be stirring as I'm adding more, it should be alright. So I'm going to go ahead and get to the next extract. Which is this Munich pure malt extract. Take a look at that. Let's see what we're working with. There's a little bit more going on. Since I had it in hot water, there's like kind of a bubble. It may be hard to see. There's kind of a bubble on the seal, but it's fine. But it's just because the hot water had a little pressure to it. No big deal. Oh, okay. My nails are not sharp enough. Okay, so this is the other round of malt that we're going to be adding. Yet another batch of liquid malt extract. Very syrup, very molassesy. Initial taste. Yeah, it's weird, but that's how you know what it tastes like. How are you going to know if you don't taste it? It's not as sweet as the first one. It's almost more just malt, like almost more pure malt. There's not very much flavor to it. It's thick, it's rich, it's a little sweet. It's like, again, you can smell it more than you can taste it. But this is probably more so for color, less than flavor. But I'm going to go ahead and add this in. Oh yeah, you can see how rich that is. Wow. That is very dark extract. I don't know what they do differently for this Munich malt extract for it to be so dark. Wow, I wish you could see it. I really, really do. Wow. With later renditions of the stream, hopefully I'll have a way, maybe a secondary camera, to put above the stove so you can see what things look like. But this is very dark. It's very, very dark. Wow. That's probably the darkest malt that I've seen. Granted, it's extract, so it's the syrup version of the grains. But it's very dark. I like it. Again, it's not very sweet. I don't know what else this type of malt would be used for. I don't know what other beers you could put this in. I'm very interested to see what the actual grain looks like, opposed to the liquid malt extract. Since it's very syrupy, it should, in theory, the grains would be very dark as well, maybe like a roasted color or toasted color, but I don't know. I don't know what I don't know what Munich malt looks like. This is my first experience with Munich malt. I'm going to keep stirring here. I'm pouring a little faster now that we're getting towards the bottom of the liquid malt extract, but I'm going to keep stirring. I really want this to be clear. At a different angle. And I'm going to do the same thing I did earlier. I'm going to scrape here. Scraping it out. Woo. Back to stirring. This is very dark. This is darker than the brown ale, at least currently. I haven't added more water to this yet to dilute it a little bit. I mean, I need it to be at 5 gallons when we're fermenting it, and it's probably at like 3.5, maybe 4 gallons now. Nah, it's probably closer to 3, but it's darker than the brown ale is currently. And I do believe I saw a chat here, so let me get that going and take a look at the chat. Have I considered fermenting in a bathtub? You can get your yeast to 65 degrees without adjusting the temperature of the entire house. So that's not a bad idea. The downside to the bathtub would be oxidation or oxidize, I don't know. But adding, I believe it's oxidation, but adding oxygen to the mix. If it's oxidized, if there's too much oxygen added, that's gonna pull back on the flavor. It's almost gonna make it. You ever drink watery lemonade or watery tea? It's essentially the same thing. If it's been oxidized, I won't say that it's watered down, but the flavor is just less than what it should be. If the flavor is gonna be boom, pow, 10 out of 10, it may be 6 out of 10 if it's been oxidized. Now, on a regular brew like this is probably going to be like a 7 or 8 out of 10 when it comes to flavor. There's going to be a bit of flavor, and it's not going to be crazy thick or rich. But if this was to get oxidized, then it may be like a 4 or 3, or maybe even worse. Like it may be something like, so there's beer and then there's bad beer. Bad beer usually has the word light in it. I say usually because there are some beers that don't have light in it, or that do have light in it that are good, but if it has light in it, it's probably bad. And the examples are Bud Light, Coors Light, Miller Light, fill in the blank, but for the cheap stuff that you find at the gas station or at a restaurant, if it has light in it, it's probably bad. In the grand scheme of things. If you like it, that's fine. Everyone's got their tastes. But I like flavor. I like something with something behind it, and those beers don't have that. That would be a good example of oxidized beer versus good beer, or what I will call good beer, because that beer to me is not good. But other beer usually is. Craft beer is usually good beer because they take the time to do it right. There's more flavor. With most of those beers that have the word light in it, they usually go about actively taking the flavor away to make it more watery, or not necessarily adding oxygen, but just adding more water for volume's sake, not to make it right. So usually that beer is just less than what you would want out of beer. And those that have light in it would be a decent example, a decent comparison, a metaphor for beer that's been oxidized. I like the idea of fermenting in something like a tub where it's just that much more, but it would not be good beer coming out of the bathtub. So it's much, much, much more clear now. I can still see a bit, and I may have to deal with that later and like filtering it and making sure that all that sediment that's in it falls to the bottom, and then cleaning that out when I'm bottling it. But wow, that's hot. First glance, it seems to be okay. We can do better though. I'm gonna go ahead and get the heat back on to get it to a boil. I'm going to keep stirring while it's getting hot, just to help it out a little. I apologize for all the clanking. That one too, and that one. Oh. I'm going to let that keep going. I do believe I saw the chat moving. Instead of putting your canister in the closet, you can put it in the tub. You can fill the water in the tub. Oh, okay. So the lid is full. Okay, that makes way more sense. Light does affect it. It doesn't affect it much, but light does affect the fermenting process. Light brings heat with it, so even if it's just enough light, it may not change the temperature very much, but it will change the temperature. So light is the other bad version. This is probably the backup bad guy when it comes to oxidation, oxidizite, whatever, however you would say that. Adding oxygen to the beer is no good. And the first thing that I saw with the brewing and the fermenting in a tub was pouring beer into the tub. Technically that would work. That would be very, very not good. But by leaving it in here and then putting it in the tub and putting water around it to make sure that the temperature doesn't change, that isn't necessarily a bad idea. But wow, I forgot already what I said. But light does affect it. Any tub here is going to have the light on a few times a day, even if it's closed. I mean, there are sheets and jackets you can put on these fermenters, but that can only help so much. There are other ways around it, but it's just currently in this house, there's no way to do it. I won't say the usual way, but the way that you find most often is the garage. Pushing the cars out of the garage and then keeping the garage closed, keeping the garage at a decent temperature. It is possible with fans and other things like that. But by never messing around with the garage, you can achieve a 65 degree. And it's a bit much sometimes, but it's possible to get below 70 degrees in the garage with using fans and AC units. I've seen it happen, I've seen videos of it. It wouldn't be efficient here, but that would probably be the supplement to doing it. Or getting something like the Firmzilla, which is what I mentioned towards the beginning of the stream. But the Firmzilla ferments the wort it doesn't have to be at a specific temperature because it force ferments. Very similar to force carbonating with a kegerator instead of having something like priming sugar, which activates, it creates CO2 in the beer, which then carbonates it. That's how you hear that sound when you take the cap off or you crack open a cold one. There aren't very many ways around that, but it's similar to the effect of kegging it. How it forces carbonates, it forces it to do that typical process just much faster. By doing that, you can kind of ignore the temperature to a degree. Pun intended. I'm going to stir a little bit more. So that sediment that I mentioned earlier it's still there, and I don't want to use the word concerned because it's not a bad thing. It's just less than what I want. Rather, the amount itself is more than what I want. I want this to be completely clear. But when it comes to my standards, this is below that. But I can't do anything about that right now, so we're gonna keep moving. I'm going to go ahead and get it to a boil. After it's at a boil, we will be able to add in the hops and start the hop boil, which takes about an hour. So what we're going to do is once it gets to a boil, I'm going to sprinkle in the first round of hops. I'll show you what it looks like. After the hops are added, we're going to let it sit for almost an hour. Add in the... Wow, sorry, this beer's got me very burpy. Towards the end of that first hour, we're going to add in the second round of hops. After that, we're going to chill it. So I've got the wort chiller over here. I've got the water hose ready. all I have to do is turn it on, hook it up, turn it on, run cooler water through the wort chiller, which is going to displace the heat in the wort and essentially transfer it. So that 200-degree wort is going to transfer into the cooler water running through the wort chiller because of the metal it's at. After that, it should drop from 200 whatever degrees to about 80 degrees in a matter of like 10 to 15 minutes, which is kind of crazy. So once we're done with that, we'll actually, that's going to be towards the end of the live stream actually. We're going to be chilling it and then testing the gravity, which is just pretty much testing the amount that's changed in the water that I've used. So it went from regular water to now wort, which is just sugary, flavored, very syrupy flavored water. It's going to take that and compare it to regular water, and that difference, that difference in the, again, it's gravity because it tests essentially the viscosity of the water. We're going to take that and take note of that number, and then compare it to that same number after the yeast is done. So once the yeast is done and we test the gravity, we take that difference, multiply it by 131. I don't know why it's 131, but it is. But once you multiply it, that tells you your alcohol content. So the difference in what it was before it fermented to what it is after it fermented, that is how that difference is the alcohol content. So that gives you an idea of how strong the beer is going to be. This beer should be around 6%. Personally, between myself, my brother, my girlfriend, my sister, all of us that live here, we're over 21. We drink every now and then, regularly, some would say, between myself and Zach for sure. But by doing so, we have a higher tolerance, so we can drink stronger beer. See here, a lot of beer you may find at the restaurants will be 4%. A lot of the beer that has light in it will be like 4.5 or 4.7%. Not crazy strong. We just need something a little bit more. I'm going to finish cleaning things up, taking the lids that you're seeing, tossing all of this, and oh, is that a boil? Is that what that is? Not yet. That is just the heat going crazy. Actually, I'm going to keep one of these just because I think I can use it later on. I may be able to use this one without the label. I can probably use this when I make my own recipe. I'm a few brews away from that. I want to get comfortable with the process before creating my own. There are tools out there to help you with it, but I am not terribly confident in myself currently. I can follow the rest. I can follow ingredients to a T, but I may not be able to say, for this beer, I need this amount of malt and liquid malt and hops and flavoring. I may not be able to do that currently, but when the time comes, I can probably use this to put my own malt in it. I may need to go to a place to get that done, but I think I can use this, so I'm going to keep it. I'm going to go ahead and put the thermometer back onto the kettle. The only reason I'm putting the thermometer on it is so that I can know about how close we are to the boil. I know that it's going to boil around 215, 220 degrees Fahrenheit. And once we get there, 217 I think this thermometer says, or something like that. But once it gets there, I'll have an idea as to know. I do have to keep an eye on it so that I can add the first round of hops in. And then after that, I will continue with the second round of hops and a few other things. I'm going to do a quick stream check just to make sure that both the Twitch and YouTube live stream are still working. And both seem to be looking good for now. Awesome. Cool. Yet another beer down. It's probably interesting to watch back. Interesting to watch back and see how I go from no beers in to now 3 beers in. I feel like I'm holding it together, but am I? I'll let you decide. So now we're creeping up on the part where sanitizing it becomes a bigger deal. After the wort, what we have right now, unfermented beer, after what this little concoction, after this gets to a certain temperature, it's going to start being exposed to bacteria. At certain temperatures, bacteria can't survive, so it's not going to grow, but it can grow if certain things are introduced below a certain temperature. I don't want any bacteria to grow. Any bacteria that grows, if it does, it can become infected, the beer. And the beer itself is essentially going to have gone to waste. It's going to taste funky. It's going to smell bad. It's just going to not be good. It's going to have been a waste of money and time. I don't like wasting either of those, so I'm going to do everything I can to prevent it from getting infected. So here in a bit, I'm going to add some sanitizer to one of my buckets. After it's in the bucket, I'm going to stir it a whole bunch, get some hot water in there, create some sanitizer that's safe to drink. I say safe to drink very lightly because you're not going to drink the sanitizer, but if sanitizer is inside what you are drinking, you're A-okay. So I'm going to do that, get some sanitizer ready. After a while, there is a point to where anything that comes in contact with the wort, again, the unfermented beer, it exposes you to the risk of infection. So I'm going to prevent everything I can. I'm going to do everything I can to prevent that. We are about 10 degrees away from boiling, so I'm going to let that keep doing what it's doing. Once it gets to boiling, I'm going to start lowering the temperature so that I can get it to a rolling boil. I don't want it to just be boiling like crazy. I just want it to lightly, boil so that it can get all the flavoring and bitterness out of the hops. That way we maximize the ingredients. It would be very similar to when it's if you're cooking and it says to add 1 cup of this, if you're adding half cup. Obviously that's not a thing that you want to do. You want to follow the ingredients. That way you get the most out of the recipe. So this is going to be the bucket I use to ferment in. What's going to happen is once it's done in here and I chill it, we're going to add this. We're going to put the wort into this bucket, get it up to just over 5 gallons of volume. After that, I'm going to seal it off. We're going to put yeast in it, then seal it off. This is where it's going to live for the next 2 weeks, I believe. I don't think this one's going to call for secondary fermentation. Oh, no, it definitely says to transfer into a secondary fermenter. So what I'm going to do is get it out of this bucket and into this one in about a week. After that, it's going to sit in here for another week, and then we're going to bottle it. We're going to create priming solution, which is essentially very hot, sugary water. Put that into the bottling bucket, which is over there. Put the beer from the bucket into the bottling bucket, and then bottle. If you have questions about that and what that looks like, feel free to refer to the last live stream that we did. Not only did I brew what I just finished drinking, but we also bottled what's also in the fridge, which I may just grab another one here in a sec. So I'm going to set this down for now. I'm going to use this bucket to hold the sanitizer in, just because it's a little bit easier to use another bucket for sanitizer with things like the giant ladle I have, this huge spoon, bottle caps. So there's quite a bit that you can use this for. So I'm going to set this off to the side. Wow. I don't need the sanitizer just yet. I'll probably do that within the last part of the hop boil. Actually, I should probably do that before that, because everything that comes into contact with the wort after the chilling process needs to be cleansed. So we're almost at a boil. We're about 5 degrees away. So there's no point in waiting around. I'm going to go ahead and I use one step sanitizer right there. The benefit of using this is this is what makes, I'm not going to say this is what makes it edible, but this is technically edible. I'm not going to take this and eat it. I'm not going to put it in water and just drink it. But in small amounts, if you pour this, if you use this to sanitize something, pour that out. The remaining amount is not going to be harmful to your body. It doesn't add very much to anything as far as volume, as far as flavor. It doesn't really do anything. But there's some that do. There's some that you have to be more precise with, let's say. But with this, what we're doing here, home brewing, all you need is 1 tablespoon of one-step sanitizer and about a gallon of water. Get that, dissolve the sanitizer, and essentially you have home sanitizer that you can use for your plates and cups and dishes. I could use this for what we have here, should we need to. So definitely having some is a good thing. I just need to get the 1 tablespoon measurement cup, which I just found. Luckily, I just put the dishes away, so it was right on top. Didn't have to go very far. Just for safe measure, I'm going to clean this other bucket first. I had the recipe sitting in it for about 4 days, so there's like some small grains and stuff in it, and I want to make sure it's clean before I put the sanitizer inside. Just had to clean that up real quick. Apologies for that. Okay, so I'll set that right here. 1 tablespoon of one-step sanitizer. And now to add water. So we're a few more degrees away from boiling here. Let's see. Yeah, we are almost there. Once it gets to a boil, we will add the first round of hops and then start the hop boil, which is about an hour. So I have a little bit more than a gallon, and rather than pouring it out, I'm just going to add a little more. And do some stirring. I'll do this over here. All right, so those that are still with me, what beer do you like to drink? Personally, I wouldn't brew something I wouldn't want to drink, so I wouldn't expect anyone else to drink it if they don't want to drink it. If they don't like this specific type of beer, why would you make it? Why are you going to spend your time doing that? Now, if you want to change your palate, if you want to fix that, I want to like this beer, that's one thing. But what do you like to drink? Tell me what you like to drink. I may consider I should be able to brew it from home, and maybe put it into the live stream or into a later video. what beers do you like to drink? There are a lot of clone recipes out there, much like what I showed earlier. So for those that do like to drink beer, what do you like to drink? Tell me what you like. Put it in the chat. I'll take a look, and if I can find a recipe that's not crazy expensive, maybe I'll brew it. So that's looking nice and sanitizer-y. And just like that, we are at a boil on this wort. So now that it's at a boil, I'm going to stir it a bit and then add the first round of hops. So let me stir it. Uh-oh. I'll just take that. That way it doesn't hit the floor again. Let's see, I'm going to take another look at it. It's a bit clearer now that a lot of heat has been applied, breaking up some of the sediment, for lack of a better term, of the grains and the liquid malt extract. So it's much clearer now. It's still dark, don't get me wrong. It's still very dark. Let me see if I have a reasonable way to show this to you. Oh. One second, let me just fish this thermometer out. So, wow, there's no way to show this, huh? Yeah, it's just brown water, essentially. Wow. I thought that was going to work, but silly me. I'm going to set the thermometer in the sink to let it cool down because it was just in the wort. And then I'm going to put it in the sanitizer to kill any bacteria because we're going to be adding that back to the wort shortly. Keep stirring. And then here in a second, we're going to be adding the hops. That looks cool. Let's go ahead and add the first round of hops. So that's going to be the first German tradition 1 ounce hops. Ugh. I'm going to go ahead and add these in. Let me get some scissors. And then it's going to boil for about 50 minutes. Okay, so already the wort has this coat of green on top, as you would imagine. It's almost like moss has been laid on top of a very, very, very disgusting murky lake. It's very brown and green on the very top. I will show you now. So give me just 1 second. I'm going to do a couple things. sec. I'm trying to figure out why my scenes are not loading. But I guess we will figure that out. So let me try. Okay, we're just gonna not do that since it's not gonna work right now. We'll try it later. But it smells much like a lot of other brews. I mean, it's just malty, very sweet, molasses smelled. That's how my kitchen smells right now. Whew. Sorry, yeah, my glasses are fogging up, so it makes it a little hard to see and stuff. I'm gonna turn the heat down just a touch and put the lid on. I want it to stay hot. I want it to keep boiling, but I don't want it to boil over. If it boils over, it's gonna make a bit of a mess. It's gonna burn and cake onto my stove, which it has before, and that is not, as you would imagine, not okay. No bueno. I don't want that to happen. It very well could, and it seems as though it may. So I'm not gonna mess with it right now. But what I will do is I will Okay. All right. So now we've had the hops going for about 5 or 10 minutes. It's about 4:30, so let's say it was 5:25. From there, we have about an hour after the hop oil, 50 minutes. So let's say 5:15. At about 5:15, we'll be adding the last round of hops. These guys right here. And we're gonna keep chugging along through the fermenting process. Let's see, things are looking good. Just doing a quick stream check, make sure everything is still up. Cool. Things look good so far. So again, we are brewing a local recipe. It's by South Congress Homebrew, SoCo Homebrew here in Austin. It is the SoCo Quick Oktoberfest Ale. Should take about 3 to 4 weeks to brew. After it's done, we should be able to test. Today is the 13th, so let's say 3 weeks. So it should be the beginning of October. Sometime in the beginning of October, we should be able to drink the Oktoberfest. It's precisely why I chose today to be the brew day, because I knew that it would take about 3 weeks, which should put us at the beginning of October for this brew. Just getting that refill that I actually forgot to get during my bathroom break. Again, we are drinking Northern Brewers Brown Ale. Relatively sweet. It's got a little body to it. It kind of sticks to the tongue when you drink it. It doesn't have a crazy aftertaste at all. Once you swallow it, most of what you're tasting is usually just the smell. You smell what it would taste like, so that's kind of what the sensation that you're getting. Still a very good beer. Sorry about that. I'm going to stir this a little bit. I'm going to close her off. I'm going to let it get back to a boil so that we can go ahead and add the next round of hops. I had it open so that those that were watching could see the boil. Let me finish cleaning off the thermometer so that I can add that back. Well, I guess right now I don't need it necessarily, but I'll clean it off so that I can leave it in the sanitizer for when we're chilling it towards the end of our hop boil. So I have sanitizer in this bucket over here. It's going to set right inside. In a bit, I'm going to flip it so that the other side gets sanitized, but we don't have to worry about that for now. Oh, there it is. Now is a good time to remind everyone that my website is live, justbrewing.com. If you visit there, any donation made from justbrewing.com is going to go directly to a Kickstarter to help open Austin's first black-owned brewery called Urban Jungle Brewing. The head brewmaster is going to be Shannon Harris, who you can find on Twitter as the Brew Brother. He's one of the very few people of color. He's He's a young black man here in America brewing beer for some of the major brewing companies, helping them with their beers. He's going to be a business owner shortly. He's hoping to open the brewery next year, and hopefully with streams like mine, those that want to help, we will be able to help open the brewery at the beginning of next year. You can find information about Shannon Harris and Urban Jungle through their website, urbanjunglebrew.com. Again, any website I'm just stumbling here. Any donations made on my website are going to be sent to Urban Jungle to help them open their doors. A lot of it is construction costs and things of that nature to help them. As you would imagine, opening a brewery and animal rescue farm is relatively tough. So they've got but that's what the live stream is for. That's what their Kickstarter is for, is to help them with that. I'm just checking on the brew to make sure it's boiling. It's boiling. I don't want it to boil over because again, that's going to make a mess. So by checking on it, letting some of the heat out, we're able to mitigate some of that. Only some though. Alrighty, so here in a bit, I'll be able to add the yeast to the sanitizer. I want the yeast itself, not the yeast inside the package, but the package to be sanitized to minimize the risk of infection. Again, an infected beer is just going to taste funky. It's going to be smelly. It's not going to be what you expected. So you'd want to do what you can to prevent that. I'm going to get the airlock in the sanitizer. Get the barcode off of it first. Cool. Okay, so this brew should take about 4 weeks, top to bottom. We're looking at about 2 weeks to ferment and about 2 weeks to carbonate. Fermentation starts after about a day and a half, from about 36 to 48 hours, like 72 hours. So for about 3 days later, after brew day, after it's been sealed in a fermenter, you'll start seeing bubbles in the airlock, which means the yeast is starting to activate, starting to work, and turn some of that sugar that's in the wort into alcohol. After that, after about a week, fermentation will slow down, and then we're going to get it out of one bucket into another. In the second bucket, that's what we call secondary fermentation. For some brews, that's where you would add more hops for flavoring, for aroma. But since this is not a hoppy beer, we're not having to worry about that. We're gonna go through secondary fermentation, mostly to clean the beer, just kind of as a filtering process, and then try to reactivate the yeast that's still remaining. We don't want any of the gunk or anything like that to go with it, so we're gonna get it nice and clean by filtering it with an auto siphon. Siphon it from one bucket to another. You can also add something like a small filter or a cone to it, so that if any chunks do go through, they at least get literally filtered. So from there, you want to let it sit for about another week and then bottle it. Bottling it takes priming sugar or priming solution, which is essentially, it's mostly table sugar. It can be table sugar and water. You get some water hot enough, add sugar to it, add a certain amount of sugar. Usually it's an ounce per gallon. My brews are about 5 gallons usually, because that's about the size of the buckets. After you get it boiling, in this case, again, it would be about 5 ounces of sugar. Get that going, get it with the hot water, let it dissolve. That sugar and water is going to react with the yeast, what's remaining, everything inside the wort really, and start to produce carbonation, CO2. That's how you hear that. That's the sounds that you get out of a can or a bottle. That's due to the carbonating process. With a kegerator, you don't have to worry about that. You can just use CO2 to carbonate it for you. There's a couple ways to do that, but the most basic way is just putting beer, the wort, after secondary fermentation, when you would be doing bottling, putting that into the keg, and then carbonating the keg over about 3 days usually is how long you... Yeah, like two or 3 days, I think. I say I think because I use a different method for carbonating it. I do what's called forced carbonating, which, and hopefully there's going to be a video on it soon, but usually what we do is put the beer, and I say beer because the yeast is fermented, it has alcohol content. I take it out of the bucket, the secondary fermenter, put it into a keg, and then put CO2 through the keg, release any oxygen that's in it. That way it's just beer and CO2, and then shake the keg essentially. Not like a lot, but rocking it back and forth just to create enough splashing so that the CO2 that is remaining that fills the remaining room of the keg, that mixes with the beer, thus carbonating it, and it can go from about a 3-day process to about a 30-minute process. You need to carbonate it by... you need to shake it. I missed my step there. You want to shake it for about 5 or so minutes, and then let it sit for about 30 minutes. So let's say 35 minutes on the carbonating process. So you can go from, again, a few days to less than an hour, beer on tap. It can make the difference if you've got people on the way, or here, I really want to try the beer, so if I can find safe shortcuts, I'm going to take them. And yet again, I just keep spilling it. Wow. Got to keep hydrating, apparently. All right. So we've got about 30 minutes left on the hop boil, which means, about 40 minutes left on the hop boil, about 30 minutes left until we add the second round of hops. After we add that round of hops, about 5, 6, 7 minutes after that, we can add the wort chiller to it to help kill any bacteria that's on the wort chiller. After that, we can chill the wort, running that cooler water through it. And then after that, we can test the gravity. So yeah, we're almost done. We probably got about 30 or so minutes left in the live stream. If you have any questions, those that are watching, feel free to put them in the chat. If you're watching this after the live stream, feel free to put them in the comment section. I will make sure to answer them. Decent time to plug the website, justbrewing.com. Any proceeds during the live stream, any donations made at the website, or on the website, I guess it would be on the website. Any of those donations made will go to help opening Austin's first black-owned brewery, Urban Jungle Brewing. Any proceeds from the merch store, justbrewing.com/merch, any proceeds from there will be sent to Stand Up to Cancer for cancer research. So hopefully we can do some good in this world. I'm going to do a quick stream check just to make sure that the YouTube and Twitch stream are still going pretty okay. The YouTube stream seems to be a little behind, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. But alright, let's keep moving. So we are almost done with the hop oil. We're passing the halfway mark. Now's the time to start cleaning, so I'm going to I don't want to mess with this just yet. I'm going to go ahead and flip the thermometer. I don't want to mess with the sanitizer just yet. I want to make sure that everything that I'm going to use is nice and sanitized. Let me add the scissors that I'm going to cut the yeast with to it. Let's see. So this is the wort chiller. You couldn't see it behind the live, what was supposed to be the live chat right there. But this is a wort chiller. This is the end that hooks up to the garden hose. And this is just outplaces the water. But you set this into the wort, run the hose water through it, and the cooler water through here is going to absorb the heat of the hot water in the wort, or the hot wort rather. So it's going to absorb that heat, transfer it, and then outplace what will be hot water. By doing this, it's going to cool the wort, it's going to chill it at a really, really efficient rate. Usually it's like a half gallon a minute, or 2 gallons, or 1 gallon every 2 minutes. So it can take about 10 or so minutes to actually chill it, but the sooner you chill it, the better. The yeast can start activating at the lower temperature, and if it takes too long, you may lose some flavoring, some color to evaporation and things like that. So I'm going to set that back down. We've got about 30 or so minutes until the second round of hops. Thanks to everyone for watching, those that are. This video is going to be published shortly after the live stream, so if you have any questions or about what the process looks like, you can go back and take a look at it as it happens. After the video, after the live stream, really it's just going to be sitting in one of my closets, an upstairs bathroom closet, for about a week. After that week, we're going to take it out of bucket 1 and then put it into bucket 2 for secondary fermentation. After that, about a week after secondary fermentation starts, we can carbonate it with that priming sugar that priming solution that I mentioned earlier, which is essentially sugar and water. Add that to the mix, let it carbonate over about 2 weeks, and then it will be ready to drink. Today is September 13th, a Sunday. So in 2 weeks, it will be, actually 3 weeks. No, it would be about 3.5 is usually how long it takes to carbonate here. So wow, that's about the first. So at about the first, I should be able to, just knock that over. At about the 1st of October, I should be able to drink the Oktoberfest. If anything, that's perfect timing for it. I should probably clean that up now. Let me put one of these on so I can do that. Perfect. I just realized the audio's been off the entire time throughout that I've been that part I was